I was sitting at my desk yesterday evening, going through old paperwork I should have sorted out years ago. The sound of my phone buzzing broke the silence. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was another scam call. But something made me glance at the screen, and when I saw the name, my heart stopped. Elena. It's been 15 years since she walked out of my life, leaving a crater so massive it took me years to even begin filling it. Back then, we had a life that seemed solid. A modest home, 2 wonderful kids, Oliver and Mia, and the kind of simple happiness that comes with routine. I thought we were building something unbreakable. But I was wrong. 15 years ago, everything fell apart when Elena had an affair. She didn't just cheat. She betrayed me in a way that felt almost calculated. She started seeing Victor, the man who lived across the street, someone I trusted enough to invite over for barbecues and birthdays. Victor wasn't just a neighbor, he was a friend, or so I thought. I'll never forget the night it all came out. It was a Sunday, late in the evening, and I just tucked the kids into bed. I was in the kitchen cleaning up when Elena walked in, her face pale but determined. She sat me down, looked me in the eye and said, "I need to tell you something." The words that followed shattered my world. She confessed everything. The secret meetings, the stolen moments, the lies she'd told to cover her tracks. And the worst part? She didn't apologize. Instead, she said something I'll never forget. "I think Victor understands me in a way you never could." I was too stunned to respond, too numb to process what was happening. The next few weeks were a blur of arguments, sleepless nights, and a creeping sense of despair. Elena didn't just leave me. She left Oliver and Mia, too. She moved in with Victor, abandoning her role as a mother without so much as a second thought. 15 years later, I've built a life for myself and the kids. It wasn't easy, but we managed. I buried the pain, or so I thought. And then yesterday, her name appeared on my phone, dragging everything back to the surface. I hesitated before answering, my mind racing with questions. Why was she calling? What could she possibly want after all this time? Against my better judgment, I picked up. "Hello?" I said, my voice colder than I intended. There was a pause on the other end, and then I heard her voice. "Hi, David. It's me, Elena." Hearing her say my name was like a punch to the gut. For a moment I couldn't speak. Then she continued, her tone soft but nervous. "I know this is unexpected, but I need to see you. There's something I need to tell you." I should have hung up. I should have told her I wanted nothing to do with her. But curiosity got the better of me. What could she possibly have to say after all these years? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. As I ended the call, a wave of dread washed over me. Whatever Elena wanted to say, I had a feeling it was going to turn my world upside down again. And I wasn't sure I was ready for it. The next morning, I couldn't focus on anything. I kept replaying the phone call in my head, dissecting every word, every pause, every inflection in Elena's voice. She sounded nervous, almost fragile, but there was something else. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Guilt, maybe? Regret? Or was it something darker? I agreed to meet her at a small coffee shop in town. It was a place we used to go to when we were still married, back when life felt simple and whole. I hadn't stepped foot in there since she left, and just the thought of sitting across from her in that same space felt like reopening a wound that had barely scarred over. When I walked in, the familiar smell of roasted coffee beans and baked pastries hit me, but it didn't bring the comfort it used to. Instead, it felt suffocating. And then I saw her. Elena was sitting at a corner table, staring down at her hands as if the answers to her life's problems were written on her palms. She looked different. Older, of course, but not in the way time naturally ages someone. She looked worn, like life had taken more from her than it had given. When she noticed me, she stood up awkwardly, brushing her hands against her jeans. "David," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Elena," I replied, my tone neutral. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. We sat down, and for a few minutes, neither of us said anything. I could tell she was struggling to find the right words, so I decided to cut to the chase. "Why did you call me?" I asked, leaning back in my chair and crossing my arms. She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if she was afraid someone might overhear. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, "I've made a lot of mistakes, David. I know that. But there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." I felt my stomach tighten. What could you possibly have to say now after all this time? She looked down at her hands again, twisting a silver ring on her finger. It wasn't a wedding ring. I noticed that right away. Victor hadn't married her, apparently. "It's about Oliver and Mia," she said, her voice cracking. The mention of our kids made my chest tighten even more. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. "What about them?" She hesitated again, and for a moment, I thought she might back out. But then she spoke, and her words hit me like a freight train. "They reached out to me," she said, "a few weeks ago." It took me a moment to process what she was saying. Oliver and Mia had reached out to her? After everything she'd done, after all the years she'd been absent from their lives, they'd reached out to her? "Why?" I asked, my voice sharp. "They wanted answers," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "They wanted to know why I left, why I abandoned them. And, David, I didn't know what to tell them." I stared at her, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. She didn't know what to tell them? How about the truth? How about the fact that she chose her affair over her family? "I thought you moved on," I said, my tone icy. "Isn't that what you wanted? A new life with Victor?" Her face crumpled at the mention of his name. "Victor and it didn't work out. He left me years ago." I didn't feel the slightest bit of sympathy for her. She'd made her bed, and now she was lying in it. "So what do you want from me?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I just want a chance to explain. To you, to them. I need to make things right." I let out a bitter laugh. "Make things right? Elena, you destroyed our family. You left me to pick up the pieces while you ran off with another man. And now, 15 years later, you think you can just waltz back into our lives and make things right?" Her tears spilled over, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her guilt manipulate me. "David, please," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I can't undo what I did. But I need to try. I need to tell you something. Something I've been carrying all these years." Her words hung in the air, heavy with an unspoken weight. I wanted to walk out, to leave her sitting there with her regrets. But a part of me, maybe the part that had been broken by her all those years ago, needed to know what she was hiding. "Fine," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Say what you need to say." Elena took a shaky breath, her hands trembling as she gripped her coffee cup. "It's about Mia," she said. "There's something you don't know." My heart stopped. The words I'd been bracing myself for, the revelation I didn't know I was afraid of, were about to come spilling out, and I wasn't sure I was ready for them. Elena's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "It's about Mia," she had said, her voice trembling, and in that moment, I felt a cold dread crawl up my spine. I stared at her, my mind racing with possibilities. Was Mia sick? Had something happened to her that I didn't know about? I clenched my fists under the table, bracing myself for whatever Elena was about to say. "What about Mia?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Elena took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with tears. "David, she's not your daughter." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. For a moment, I thought I hadn't heard her correctly. "What did you just say?" Elena's lips trembled, and she looked down at the table, unable to meet my eyes. "Mia, she's Victor's daughter." Felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Couldn't move, couldn't speak. My mind was a storm of emotions. Anger, confusion, betrayal. Mia wasn't my daughter? The little girl I'd raised, loved, and fought for all these years wasn't mine? "You're lying," I said finally, my voice low and dangerous. "You're lying to me, Elena." "I'm not," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I wanted to tell you back then, but I was too scared, and then I left and it was too late. I'm so sorry, David." "Sorry?" I hissed, my voice rising. You're sorry? You lied to me for 15 years. You let me believe Mia was my daughter. Let me love her like she was mine. And now you want to say you're sorry. The other patrons in the coffee shop turned to look at us. But I didn't care. My entire world was crumbling, and I wasn't going to sit there and pretend everything was fine. Elena, I said, my voice shaking with fury. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any idea how much pain you've caused? How could you do this to me? To Mia? She doesn't even know, does she? Elena shook her head, sobbing. No, she doesn't know. I never told her. I thought it would be better that way. Better, I spat. For who? For you? So you wouldn't have to face the consequences of your actions? You're unbelievable, Elena. I pushed back my chair, the screech of the legs against the floor cutting through the tense silence. I can't do this, I said, standing up. I can't listen to any more of your lies. David, wait, Elena pleaded, reaching out to grab my arm. Please don't leave. There's more. I need to tell you everything. I yanked my arm away, glaring down at her. Why should I? You've done nothing but lie to me. Why should I believe a single word that comes out of your mouth? Because you deserve to know the truth, she said, her voice breaking. Even if it's too late, you deserve to know. For a moment I hesitated. As much as I wanted to walk away and leave her to her regrets, I knew I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't hear her out. So I sat back down, my heart pounding in my chest. Fine, I said coldly. Start talking, but you'd better not leave anything out. Elena nodded, wiping her tears with a trembling hand. It started before Mia was born, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor and we were already involved when I found out I was pregnant. I wasn't sure who the father was at first, but when Mia was born, I knew. She looked so much like him, David. I couldn't deny it. I felt like I was going to be sick. All those years I had looked at Mia and seen my daughter. I had loved her, cared for her, sacrificed for her. And now I was supposed to believe she wasn't mine? Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice raw with emotion. Because I was scared, Elena said, tears streaming down her face. I knew if I told you, it would destroy you, and I didn't want to lose you. But then everything fell apart, and I made the worst decision of my life. I left. I shook my head, my anger boiling over. You didn't just leave, Elena. You abandoned your children. You abandoned me. And now you're back expecting what? Forgiveness? Redemption? What do you want from me? Elena's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw the full weight of her guilt. I don't expect anything from you, David. I needed to tell you the truth. I needed to face you and admit what I did. And I needed to tell you something else. What now? I asked, my patience hanging by a thread. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. Victor, he's dead. He died last year in an accident. And before he died, he told me something. Something about you. I narrowed my eyes, my heart pounding in my chest. What are you talking about? Elena hesitated, as if struggling to find the right words. And then she said, Victor told me that he did something to you, something terrible. And I think you need to know what it was. My breath caught in my throat. I leaned forward, my mind racing. What did he do, Elena? She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she reached for her coffee cup. He sabotaged your business, David. He wanted to ruin you so you'd be too broken to fight for custody. He wanted me and Mia all to himself. The weight of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. All those years of struggling, of barely making ends meet, of wondering why everything I touched seemed to fall apart. It was him. Victor had been pulling the strings, destroying my life from behind the scenes. I leaned back in my chair, my mind spinning. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had believed, was a lie. And now, after all these years, the truth was finally coming to light. But at what cost? Elena's confession hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating and inescapable. Victor had sabotaged my business? The very thing I had poured my blood, sweat, and tears into? The thought churned in my stomach like poison. I stared at her, my jaw tightening as I fought to keep my composure. You knew about this? I asked, my voice dangerously low. She shook her head quickly, her eyes wide with fear. No, David, I swear I didn't. I only found out after he died. He confessed it to me, like it was some kind of deathbed repentance. He said he couldn't take it to the grave without telling me. And you didn't think to come forward sooner? I snapped, my voice rising despite myself. You didn't think I deserved to know how he destroyed my life? How he tore apart everything I worked for? Tears spilled down her cheeks. But I didn't care. Not this time. I didn't know how to face you, she whispered. I was ashamed. I still am. But I couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell you the truth. David. I had to. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. My carpentry business had been my pride and joy, the thing that defined me. When it failed, I blamed myself. I thought I wasn't good enough, that I had made too many mistakes. I spiraled into self-doubt and financial ruin, all while trying to raise 2 kids on my own. And all this time, it wasn't my fault. It was Victor. How? I asked, my voice cold and clipped. How did he do it? Elena hesitated, then finally said, he had connections, David. He pulled strings to make sure your contracts fell through. He spread rumors about your work being subpar. He even paid people to write fake reviews online. He wanted to cripple you financially, so you wouldn't have the resources to fight for custody. Her words felt like daggers. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was calculated, premeditated. Victor hadn't just stolen my wife. He tried to take everything from me. For a moment, I sat there in silence, my hands gripping the edge of the table. The anger bubbling inside me was almost too much to contain. But then a thought struck me. A chilling, horrible thought. If Victor wanted to ruin me so badly, I said slowly, why didn't he come after Oliver too? Why was it only Mia he wanted? Elena's face went pale. Her hands fidgeted nervously in her lap, and I knew she was hiding something. Elena, I said, my voice like steel, what aren't you telling me? She looked away, her lips trembling. David, there's more, but I don't know how to say it. Try, I said flatly. She took a deep breath, her eyes filling with fresh tears. Victor, he wanted Mia because he knew she was his. But Oliver, he suspected Oliver wasn't yours either. I froze, the world spinning around me. What? Elena's words came out in a rush, as if saying them quickly would lessen their impact. Before we were married, David, there was someone else. It was a one-night thing and I thought it was over. But then I found out I was pregnant with Oliver, and I wasn't sure. I convinced myself he was yours, that it didn't matter. But Victor, he found out about the other man, and he always doubted that Oliver was yours. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Every part of me wanted to scream, to lash out, to do something, anything, to make the pain stop. Elena, I said, my voice shaking, are you telling me that neither of my kids are mine? She flinched at the words, her face crumpling with guilt. I don't know, David. I don't know for sure. But it's possible. Possible. That word echoed in my mind like a death knell. The 2 children I had raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for might not even be mine. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I can't do this, I said, my voice breaking. I can't sit here and listen to this anymore. David, please, Elena pleaded, standing up as well. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you to let me make this right. Let me help you find the truth. I turned to leave, but her words stopped me in my tracks. I took a DNA test for Mia, she said quickly. I have the results. And if you want, we can do one for Oliver too. I spun around, my eyes blazing. You took a DNA test for Mia? When? Last month, she admitted, her voice barely audible. After she reached out to me, I couldn't keep lying. I had to know for sure. And I demanded. What did it say? She hesitated, and in that moment, I knew the answer. She's not yours, Elena said, her voice breaking. Mia isn't your biological daughter. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. I turned and walked out of the coffee shop, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Outside, the cool air hit my face, but it did little to calm the storm inside me. My entire life felt like a lie, and I didn't know how to piece it back together. As I stood there on the sidewalk, staring blankly at the cars passing by, one thought kept echoing in my mind. If Mia wasn't mine and Oliver might not be either, who was I anymore? I drove home in a daze, the events of the last hour replaying in my mind like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. Elena's words echoed in my ears. Mia isn't your biological daughter. Oliver might not be either. The foundation of my life, the years I had dedicated to my children, felt like they were crumbling beneath me. Who was I if I wasn't their father? What did any of it mean? When I got home, I sat in the driveway, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to cry, to hit something, anything to release the storm inside me. But I couldn't. My kids, no, our kids, they were still my priority no matter what the DNA said. I walked into the house, and there they were, Oliver and Mia. Oliver was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, while Mia was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of juice. They looked up when they saw me, their faces lighting up with smiles that used to bring me peace. Now they only brought questions. "Hey, Dad," Oliver said casually. "How was your meeting?" Meeting. That's what I told them when I left the house earlier. Just a meeting. It was fine, I said, my voice barely steady. Mia came over, her bright eyes full of concern. "You look tired. Are you okay?" "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just a long day." I wanted to tell them. I wanted to sit them down and explain everything, to share the truth and let them decide how to feel about it. But how do you tell your children that their entire existence might be built on lies? How do you destroy their sense of identity in one conversation? Couldn't. Not yet. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat in my study with a glass of whiskey in hand. I stared at the wall, my mind racing. Elena's revelations had opened up wounds I didn't even know I had, and the thought of more secrets waiting to be uncovered was almost too much to bear. But I couldn't ignore it. I needed to know. The next morning I called Elena. My voice was firm, sharper than it had been at the cafe. "I want a DNA test for Oliver," I said. There was a long pause on the other end before she replied. "Okay, I'll help you arrange it." I didn't thank her. I didn't say anything else. I just hung up. A week later, the DNA test results arrived in my email inbox. I stared at the unopened email for what felt like hours, my finger hovering over the mouse. Finally, I clicked it, and as I read the results, my stomach dropped. Oliver wasn't mine either. I sat back in my chair, the weight of the truth crashing down on me. My entire life, the years of fatherhood, the sacrifices, the love I had poured into my children, was built on lies. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. The rational part of me knew that biology didn't change the bond one had with Oliver and Mia. I had been their father in every way that mattered. But the betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. I needed answers. I called Elena again, my voice shaking with anger. "You knew," I said. "You had to have known all along." "No, David, I swear I didn't," she said, her voice pleading. "I had my suspicions, but I convinced myself they weren't true. I wanted to believe they were yours. I wanted to believe I hadn't ruined everything." "You did ruin everything," I snapped. "You ruined my life, Elena. You ruined theirs. How am I supposed to tell them this? How am I supposed to look them in the eye and explain that I'm not their father?" "They don't need to know," she said quickly. "David, please, they don't need to know. It doesn't change anything. You've been their father all these years. That's what matters." I laughed bitterly. "What matters? Do you even hear yourself? They deserve to know the truth, Elena. They deserve to know who they are." "Please," she begged. "Let me help you. Let me talk to them with you. We can figure this out together." "Together," I repeated, my voice dripping with disdain. "There is no together, Elena. You made sure of that 15 years ago." I hung up before she could say anything else. That evening, I called Oliver and Mia into the living room. They sat on the couch, their faces full of curiosity and concern. "What's going on, Dad?" Oliver asked. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "There's something I need to tell you," I said. "Something I just found out. And it's not easy to say." Mia's eyes widened, and Oliver leaned forward, his expression serious. "It's about your mom," I began. "And it's about me." I hesitated, the weight of the truth pressing down on me. But there was no turning back now. "I recently found out that, biologically, I'm not your father," I said, my voice breaking. "For either of you." The room went silent. Oliver and Mia stared at me, their faces a mix of shock and confusion. "What?" Oliver said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "It doesn't change how much I love you," I said quickly. "It doesn't change anything about the life we've built together. But it's the truth, and you deserve to know." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "How? How could this happen?" "Your mom. She made mistakes," I said, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "She made choices that hurt all of us. But none of this is your fault. And it doesn't change how much I care about you." Oliver stood up abruptly, pacing the room. "This doesn't make any sense," he said. "You're my dad. You've always been my dad." "I know," I said. "And I always will be if you'll let me. But I couldn't keep this from you. You deserved to know the truth." Mia wiped her tears, her voice trembling. "What about Mom? Does she know?" "She does," I said. "And she wants to talk to you. But only if you're ready." Oliver stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes full of pain. "I don't know if I can handle this right now." "I understand," I said. "Take all the time you need. I'm here for you. Always." They didn't say much after that. Mia went to her room, and Oliver said he needed some air. I sat alone in the living room, the weight of the truth pressing down on me like a boulder. This wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. But for now, all I could do was hop. The house was eerily quiet after our conversation. I could hear Mia crying softly in her room, and Oliver had left without saying where he was going. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, my mind numb. 15 years. That's how long I had lived this lie. Raised them, loved them, sacrificed for them. And now everything had changed. My phone buzzed. "Elena." I ignored it. I wasn't ready to hear more excuses. An hour later, Oliver came back. His face was red, his eyes filled with something between anger and sadness. "I don't know what to do with this, Dad," he said, his voice hoarse. "I don't either," I admitted. "But we'll figure it out. Together." Mia emerged from her room, clutching a childhood photo of the three of us. "Are you still going to be our dad?" she whispered. I looked at her, my heart breaking. "I was never not your dad," I said. "That will never change." Mia threw her arms around me, sobbing into my chest. Oliver sat beside us, his face tense, but he didn't pull away when I put a hand on his shoulder. The pain wasn't going away anytime soon. But for now, we were still a family, and no DNA test could ever take that away. The next morning, I woke up feeling drained, like I had aged 10 years overnight. The truth had been spoken, but the damage lingered. Oliver and Mia were quiet at breakfast, their usual light-hearted chatter replaced with an uneasy silence. Then my phone rang again. "Elena." This time I answered. "We need to talk," she said immediately. "I think we've said enough," I replied, my voice cold. "No," she insisted. "There's more you don't know." I hesitated, then exhaled sharply. "Fine. Meet me at the park. 1 hour. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting on a bench, wringing her hands. She looked up as I approached, her face tired, almost desperate. "I didn't just leave because of Victor," she blurted out. "I left because I was scared. And because—" She hesitated. "Because what?" I demanded. She swallowed hard. "Victor blackmailed me, David." My blood ran cold. "Blackmailed you how?" "He threatened to tell you about Mia and Oliver before I could. He said he'd ruin me if I didn't leave with him. I was weak, I gave in. I stared at her, disbelief mixing with rage. You let him destroy my life, and now you expect sympathy? No, she said quickly. But I need you to understand. I was manipulated too, and I regret it every single day. I ran a hand down my face, frustration boiling over. You regret it? That doesn't fix anything, Elena. She nodded. I know, but I want to make things right. If you'll let me. I didn't answer, because for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted her anywhere near my family ever again. I stared at Elena, the woman who had once been my entire world, and now felt like a stranger. Her confession about Victor's blackmail made sense in a twisted way, but it didn't erase the damage. It didn't undo the years of pain, the betrayal, or the lies. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said finally, my voice steady but firm. But I do know one thing. I'm done letting the past control me. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I understand. I want Oliver and Mia to know I love them, that I never stopped. That's up to them, I said simply. You left, Elena. I picked up the pieces. And no matter what biology says, they're my kids. She nodded again, looking down at her hands. I won't push. I just hope. One day, they'll let me back in. I didn't respond. Instead, I stood up and walked away, feeling lighter than I had in years. That evening, Oliver and Mia sat with me in the living room. The air between us was still heavy, but something had shifted. We talked, Oliver said, his voice measured. Mia and we decided something. I braced myself, my heart pounding. We don't care what the DNA says, Mia said, reaching for my hand. You're our dad. You always will be. I swallowed hard, emotion choking my throat. Oliver nodded. You raised us. You loved us. That's what matters. I looked at my kids, the two people who had given my life meaning through all the heartbreak, and felt an overwhelming sense of peace. No matter what had happened, no matter the lies and betrayals, the one thing that remained true was this. I was their father, and nothing could ever take that away. For the first time in years, I knew we were going to be okay.